Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
The office of the governor is in news again. Governor as in Rajyapal, or the institution of the Raj Bhavan is in news again for the wrong reasons. In fact, I have forgotten the last time any Raj Bhavan was in the news for good reasons. Because that institution of the governor of a state or Raj Bhavan is not designed to be, it's not designed to make good news, because it is designed to be a ceremonial position with no powers, very little to do except cut ribbons, etc., etc. So if it does its normal job, it makes no news. When it tries to do something, it makes news for the wrong reasons, because usually when a governor tries to do something beyond the routine, that means the governor is misusing his or her office. And right now, you must have guessed by now, we are talking about Rajasthan. So Governor of Rajasthan, Kalraj Mishra, a very decent, nice human being, a veteran, a contemporary of sort of Vajpayee, is younger than Vajpayee, maybe about a decade younger than Vajpayee, but somebody who's worked with Vajpayee for a long time, so he's protege as well. Man pushing 80 now. He was a cabinet minister in the first Modi cabinet. So Kalraj Mishra is the governor of Rajasthan, and you can see that he thinks that his KRAs, key result areas, are not just what the constitution gave him or what the president of India gave him. The governor in India is the president's ambassador or plenipotentiary in his state. So governor in the federal system forms a very important link between the center and the state government, but the governor is not answerable to the central cabinet. The governor answers the president. The president follows the cabinet's advice, but that's besides the point. In fact, there's a Supreme Court judgment of 1979, a 5-judge constitution bench, that clearly stated that the governor's office is not a government job in the sense of his being a government servant and bound by the orders of the government. So constitution also gives the governor quite a bit of autonomy not to do funny things. It doesn't give him powers to do anything discretionary, except maybe to give out a little relief fund from a discretionary quota. Beyond that, a governor in the Indian federal system has no power. He's a titular, he or she is a titular head. But that is not the way our governors have seen their role to be. And this is not new, except it's now become much more pronounced. So what has Kalraj Mishra done? Besides the fact that it has turned down several demands by the cabinet has taken a call to call a session of the assembly. But he's been asking for a reason. He's saying, if you want to hold a vote of confidence, please declare so. Now, why should it be necessary for the cabinet to declare that? A governor is bound by the cabinet's advice. And then some odd things have happened, because the High Court in Rajasthan has also taken a view which many jurists find very odd, and which they find in contradictions or contravention of many set Supreme Court orders, with which I agree as well. So the High Court has also gone that way, and now the governor came to his next position, line of defense, where he said, I can't call an assembly session at such short notice, give me at least 21 days notice. So that's how Gehlot government said, all right, a session beginning 14th of August, to which he has now relented. The governor has relented. Now, the chief of the Congress party in Rajasthan has pointed out, as my colleague, our political editor D.K. Singh reminds me, he's pointed out that there have been 4 sessions of the same assembly that the same governor has called already at less than 10 days notice. So how does he suddenly make up a rule for a 21-day notice? That's because for the governor now, I use my powers as I wish to. That's the reason I said yesterday on Twitter, it was a bit impertinent, but I think it had to be said, that if our governors are sent to Raj Bhavans to protect the constitution, what do governors do? In fact, late Mr. Naresh Chandra, a former cabinet secretary, who had been governor also of Gujarat and who had held every key position the government of India had, including ambassador to America. I had once asked him, sir, why do we have governors, Naresh ji? India does not need governors. So he said, भाई देखिए ऐसा है कि ये governor जो होता है, he represents the glory of the republic and the constitution in the state. Now, if that is the role of the governor, then the governor should not go beyond that rule, but nobody follows that. So that's the reason I said, and you know why I call it impertinent but necessary. I said that now the national emblem that is used in our Raj Bhavans, instead of saying Satyamev Jayate as the national motto, maybe we should now start saying Jiski Lathi, Uski Bhans. Might is right. Because that is what our governors are doing one after the other. Rajasthan is only the latest example. Now, I know that immediate response will be, so what do you think was happening in Congress times? To which counter response will be, so what do you think was happening in Vajpayee's times? To which another response could be, so what do you think was happening in Devegowda's times? So the fact is that governor's office has been misused from the very beginning. It's just that other societies, systems evolve for the better. We have evolved for the worse. Our constitutional decency has gone downhill for sometimes slowly, very slowly, and then sort of rapidly. And now it's in a free fall. So who's the governor now? All the governors, particularly when you have a government in power in Delhi with a majority, all the governors are like, when you read about the army and we read about army operations, whether it's in Galwan or Kargil before that, we just had the anniversaries, you are told about a Ghatak Dasta or a Ghatak platoon. This is the commando trained special operations platoon in every battalion, which goes out and carries out the difficult job to begin with, usually by stealth. So the governors in India, almost 30 of them, have now become, I'm saying almost 30 because at any given point of time, one or two slots may be vacant. The governors in India have become the central government's Ghatak Dasta. They are the ones who carry out these special operations. Before then, the rest can move in. So they secure the ground, they secure a foothold, then the rest come in. And they also prevent, quote unquote, the political adversary from securing that ground as well, which is what the governor of Rajasthan has done. He's doing nothing out of the ordinary. Now, I'll take you back a little bit. When did the governor start to misbehave in India? In 1952. 1952 is when we held our first election. So that early, except what was seen as a governor's misdemeanor then in 1952, today is a very routine thing. So Sri Prakash, who was the governor of then Madras state, he invited Rajaji C. Rajagopalachari to be sworn in as chief minister. And he faced criticism in 1952 because Rajaji was not a member of the assembly, nor had he contested the election. So on that he faced criticism, and it was seen that the governor's office had been misused. Now it's a routine thing. Now you can be sworn in prime minister without being a member of the house. See, very recently in Maharashtra, Uddhav Thackeray is not even from BJP. He was sworn in without being a member of the house. And then you saw that little tamasha when the governor of the state, the famous, the top of the pops, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, and you know why top of the pops, he's the one who swore in Devendra Fadnavis' government at 5:47 a.m. So 5:47 a.m. swearing in fame, Bhagat Singh Koshyari, former Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, he refused to notify elections to the state's legislative council because that state has two houses. Because through that council, Uddhav Thackeray could have become a member and then continued on as Chief Minister, because otherwise within 6 months, if you are not elected to either house, then you have to go. So that could be averted only when Uddhav Thackeray finally spoke with the Prime Minister, and whatever happened, the Prime Minister intervened and he was able to get in. Otherwise, that governor was having failed in his 5:47 a.m. operation, but was now going to carry out this one. So look at the kind of difference. But the fact that he was sworn in without being a member of any house, this time didn't even raise an eyebrow in 1952, that was seen as a misdemeanor. So 1957, remember this is the time when the world was still coming out of the Second World War. It had been divided on West and East basis, or communist and non-communist basis, or communist and democratic basis. At that point, in fact, when India became independent, there were most Indian communists who did not see that as full freedom, etc. So one of Indian democracy's big victories was that bulk of India's leftists joined the national mainstream. In 1957, they got elected in Kerala. Before that, there had only been one instance of communists getting elected to power in a democracy. And that was the tiny state, tiny European state of San Marino. It is so tiny that you can be driving from one European country to the other and pass San Marino several times without even noticing, unless somebody points it out to you. Also, if you've been a stamp collector, you might remember San Marino. Many of us got introduced to San Marino because it always produced the nicest looking, the prettiest postage stamps. And this was always hot property in triangles, in quadrangles, in all kinds of interesting shapes and numbers and colors, etc., etc. So it was tiny San Marino which had elected, the only one to be elected, to have elected communists in a democracy before that. So you can imagine what a big change it was in India. And the Congress party did not like it, even Nehru's Congress. Now, as you would expect, the left government headed by EMS Namudripad, no less, it introduced lots of land reforms, and it also came up with some laws, both on land use and also on education. That would have taken the government very deeply into the management of educational institutions. Many of those in Kerala, even now, are run by groups, either caste groups like NSS, which is the Nayar Association, or by religious groups. And religious groups for Catholic Church, NSS I mentioned to you, the caste group, then Indian Union Muslim League. So all of them got together to protest essentially against the education bill, but also land, and then the Congress got involved in it. So basically Congress was driving this agitation. This became quite nasty. On 13th June of 1959, there was a police firing in which 7 people were killed. Again, remember 1959, 7 getting killed. Police firing was very bad news. The left government was accused of killing people in cold blood. They said that the crowd was attacking a police station. Familiar story. The left also said the CIA was organizing these protests. But the fact is, those protests were used as a pretext then by the governor appointed by the Nehru government, a governor called B. Ramakrishna Rao, Borgola Ramakrishna Rao, to recommend to the center to dismiss that state government using Article 356 of the Constitution. So this became the first big incident, and that too in a mainland state. Mainland state means, I'm not getting into the history of Kashmir because that is more complicated. The first instance of a state government being dismissed using Article 356. So 1959, once again, the governor had done exactly what the center wanted. So look, you can say that this is not unprecedented. What Mr. Kalraj Mishra is doing has been done many times before. So somebody set a bad precedent. In this case, it was Jawaharlal Nehru. The excuse was Article 356, constitutional breakdown. But once you set a bad precedent, we say this all the time, that will be followed. Not only will be followed, every subsequent leader will make it worse and worse and worse and worse, and that is what has happened. So 1984, a more familiar story to today's generations, Andhra Pradesh, N.T. Rama Rao had got elected as the first non-Congress Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh in 1983. 1984, he went to America for his heart surgery. As he went for his heart surgery, Nadendra Bhaskar Rao, who was a kind of deputy to him, and he had defected from the Congress to his party, to Telugu Desam party, he decided to stage a coup. He took a bunch of MLAs out and he said, I'm going to be running the government now. And the state governor there, the infamous, now you are really going up the ladder of infamy of India's Raj Bhavans, Ram Lal, former Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh. He walked in and he swore Narendra Bhaskar Rao in. Obviously, this was unsustainable in the long run, weakened the Congress, but also in the long run sounded the death knell for the Raj Bhavan as an institution. Then 1988, we had Karnataka, Governor P. Venkat Subbiah. He is the one who did not give power to S.R. Bommai, did not even allow him a floor test. That led to the Supreme Court getting involved and setting the principle of the floor test. That's why whenever such a problem arises, we'll say the Bommai case judgment should apply. So Bommai case judgment was that in any such doubt, there should be a floor test. So that also happened because a governor called Mr. P. Venkat Subbiah, a Congress governor, this is 1988, Rajiv Gandhi is in power, he did this. 1994, Bhanu Pratap Singh, governor of Goa, Wilfred D'Souza's government fell because of some defections. He immediately installed Ravi Nayak without checking anything. But since it was Goa, maybe we didn't notice it. But remember, Narasimha Rao was then Prime Minister. 1996, more recent and more relevant because it's Gujarat. So Suresh Mehta in Gujarat, he lost his majority, or seemed like he had lost his majority, because Shankar Singh Waghela defected with a bunch of MLAs from BJP to Congress. It's the most notable defection from BJP to Congress and probably the only one of any consequence. Usually BJP people don't defect, not to the Congress anyway. So he defected to the Congress with a bunch of people. Governor Krishan Pal Singh was obviously playing along with the Congress party. Suresh Mehta was able to prove his majority in the House, and yet the governor advised the central government to dismiss the state government. Do you know whose government it was at the center? It was Deve Gowda's government, obviously controlled by the Congress party from outside. Then come to 1997, Uttar Pradesh. Kalyan Singh's government lost majority because Loktantrik Congress and some other elements walked out of it. When that happened, once again Ramesh Bhandari, instead of bothering about show of strength, floor test, etc., he joined hands with Jagdambika Pal of Loktantrik Congress and installed a government without proving its majority. It so happened that that government lasted not more than 3 days. So Jagdambika Pal became this, he lived with this infamy of being a chief minister only for 2.5 days. Although, mind you, the way the rules worked in Uttar Pradesh until recently, all former chief ministers got a big house in Lucknow. So just maybe those 60 hours of chief ministership got him also entitled to a big bungalow in Lucknow. So that was for 3 days. That's when Ramesh Bhandari, again, I'm telling you that this, just as our Raj Bhavan morality is going downhill, on the scale of infamy, our governors are rising higher and higher and higher. Then, if you thought Ramesh Bhandari was bad, then 2005, Bhuta Singh, who dissolved the government in Bihar, although JDU claimed that they had majority, he was not going to brook any of that. 2005 again, Sipte Razi, and this is when UPA is in power. 2005, Sipte Razi in Jharkhand, he installs Shibu Soren's government, even though the BJP claims that they have the numbers. Now this again is set aside by the Supreme Court. There is a floor test, after which BJP's Arjun Munda becomes the chief minister. Then even more recent, 2010 Karnataka, Yediyurappa rebelled, walked out with a bunch of people from the House. The Speaker of the House, KG Boppaya, he in fact expelled B.S. Yediyurappa's MLAs to protect the BJP government, because while UPA is in power in Delhi, the government and the speaker are from the BJP. H.R. Bharadwaj writes to the central government saying that the state government should be dismissed and Article 356 should be used or President's rule should be imposed. But the center rejects that. So if you thought Ramesh Bhandari was bad, now on that bad scale, HR Bhardwaj goes even higher. And then you come to the examples under the Modi government. In 6 years, so a young reporter, Fatima Khan, has done a story listing 7 instances of governors going beyond their brief and acting like handmaidens of this central government. Since these are more recent, I will not talk about these in detail. You can see these, you can see the list run on the screen, and I will also be sharing the story with you in the description. You can read that. But just a quick rundown. Uttarakhand 2016, Vijay Bahuguna leaves Harish Rawat's government. Governor does not recommend president's rule. He's clarified to us, but lets the center know that things are bad. The center decides on president's rule. Then the court gets involved. High Court first and Supreme Court later, and Harish Rawat's government is restored. So 2016. Goa 2017, you know what happened. Congress got 17 out of 40. It's a house of 40. BJP got 13 out of 40. The governor, Mridula Sinha, said, I'm not inviting the largest single party. And even if there is no pre-poll alliance, I'd rather invite the party that now sets up a post-poll alliance. So BJP, which had 13 out of 40 compared to Congress's 17, they were invited. And once you are invited, once the governor is your own, once the central government is your own, ED, CBI, etc. are your own, then it's the principle of Siya Bhai Kotwal, ab dar kahe ka. When my lover is the sheriff, who do I fear? So that's what happened in Goa 2017. 2017 again, Manipur. Congress got 28 out of 60. BJP got 21 out of 60. Again, the governor, Nazma Heptullah, did not invite the largest single party. It did not even have the excuse of the largest pre-poll alliance. It invited the BJP, let them form a post-poll alliance, and that's how BJP is continued on in power. Bihar 2017, 18 hours after Nitish Kumar broke off with Lalu and joined hands with the BJP, Lalu and Congress said they had the numbers and they should be allowed to prove their majority, but they were not given an opportunity. Keshrinath Tripathi was the governor. Then Karnataka again, Vajubhai Wala. That drama happened just the other day when Yediyurappa was installed while he didn't have the numbers. BJP had fallen short, and Devagowda's party and Congress party had an alliance. They had the numbers. Finally, the Supreme Court got involved again. Vajubhai Wala suffered a loss of face and he had to go. Before that, mind you, when Bhuta Singh had done his funny things in Bihar, he had also lost his job. And also remember, the governor of Arunachal Pradesh, Mr. Raj Khova, had also lost his job for doing something like this. Then Bhagat Singh Koshyari, the champion of champions, as we said, who in 2019 installed a government at 5:47 a.m. of Devendra Fadnavis and Ajit Pawar without being shown any numbers, while the Congress, NCP and the Shiv Sena were saying that we have an alliance, we will come and prove to you that we have the numbers. Once again, the court got involved in that case. The Supreme Court said floor test right now without a long enough lease, because in 14, 15 days, 20 days that people want, you can always try and buy up people. You have more time to buy, but Supreme Court did not allow it. So that government had to resign, and that's why you have the Aghadi government there in power. Then again, now these things are happening in very quick succession. What was a test match? And test match on the old pattern, when you played 10 test matches, one got divided, has now become a T20, which is over in quick time. And usually it's over in the favor of the side that has the umpire. And in this case, governor is the umpire. So we had Lalji Tandon, again a BJP veteran in Madhya Pradesh, who gave Kamal Nath only 48 hours to prove his majority, while some of his MLAs had defected to Jyotiraditya Scindia, and that change was brought about. So this is how this big mess has been going on in India. What's happening in Rajasthan is a part of that pattern. Now what this does is, okay, you can say a precedent was set by Nehru in 1959, it was. But it tells you that while we follow all bad precedents and make them worse, we have no statesmanship in all these decades. We haven't acquired or grown any statesmanship. either at the center or at the level of the Raj Bhavans. But then you know that people are not chosen for these Raj Bhavans because they are people of great stature, respect, or great constitutional commitment, or intellectual or philosophical or moral integrity. They are selected to do your job. They are appointed there to be your handmaidens, and that's what they do. In fact, if you look at the average age of India's governors, keep out semi-states like Delhi and Pondicherry, the average age would be close to 80. So these are, in fact, 3 or 4 of them are 85 or 85 plus. Lalji Tandon unfortunately passed away just now at 85 plus. These are people with very little left in life for themselves. If they lose this job, they have to go into retirement. This is a Raj Bhavan, old colonial splendor, ADCs, liveried staff, waiters, sumptuary allowance, your family can live well, many other privileges. So basically, all this is done for all this plus ideology as well, particularly in the case of the BJP. So all this combines now to make the governor's office the least respected in India. And remember, this is the office that was designed by the framers of the Constitution to protect the glory of the Republic, as I said, the glory of the Republic of the Constitution. Remember the words of Mr. Naresh Chandra.